Students, myself Dr. Neeta Jain, and today we will discuss the mouth parts of insects. The insect head is a sclerotized capsule, but it is actually made up of 6 segments, out of which the mandibular, maxillary, and labial segments of the head bear appendages which are modified for feeding, and therefore they are called as mouth parts. What are the different types of mouth parts? First is the labrum, which is found in the front or on the dorsal side. It is the upper lip. And on the lower side or on the ventral side is the labium, which makes the lower lip. And on the lateral sides is a pair of mandibles and a pair of maxilla. These mouth parts, they surround a tongue-like structure which is called as hypopharynx in the center. The mouth parts are modified in the insects depending on their feeding habits and the food they have. We will discuss out here 5 types of mouth parts, and the first one is the biting and chewing type. The biting and chewing type of mouth parts is found in Lepisma, that is silverfish, grasshoppers, crickets, cockroaches, termites, beetles, and some Hymenoptera. Some larval forms also, they have biting and chewing type of mouth parts. In these type of insects, the food they eat is solid and it has to be broken down into small parts before digestion occurs. So let us look into the diagram. First of all, this is the labium. The labium is a simple plate which is attached to the clypeus and it forms the upper lip. Then comes on the just behind the labium a pair of mandibles. These mandibles, they are hard, chitinous, and they have strong muscles for movement, and on the inner side are present teeth-like structures or denticles which, when they rub against each other, they break down the food into smaller particles. Then on the lateral sides, just behind the mandibles, is a pair of maxilla. This maxilla is, as just look into the structure, this maxilla is made up of 3 parts. The basal part is cardo and stipes, and then after that comes Lecinia and Galea, and on the outer side is the maxillary pulp. Now this maxillary pulp is sensory in nature, whereas the Lecinia, both the Lecinia of both the sides, they rub against each other just like the mandibles, and they chew the food or break down the food. Then comes the lower lip or the labium. It is also called as second maxilla. This is the labium. Labium is made up of 3 parts: submentum, by which it is attached to the head. After submentum comes the mentum, and last is the prementum. At the base of the prementum, we see there is a pair of 3 segmented labial palps. This is in case of grasshopper. discussing the typical mouth parts, biting and chewing type of grasshopper. Now, the prementum is made up of two parts, glossa and paraglossa. So, these were the mouth parts, and as I have told you, in the center is the hypopharynx. Along the hypopharynx runs the salivary duct. So, coming to the second type of mouth parts, that is the piercing and sucking type of mouth parts. The piercing and sucking type of mouth parts are found in those insects like mosquitoes, female mosquitoes which suck blood, bed bugs and kissing bug. They are also blood sucking, and in herbivorous insects like aphids which suck plant sap. In the sucking insects or piercing and sucking type of insects, the salivary duct is modified into a salivary syringe. So first of all, let us discuss the structure, then we will discuss the mechanism. Now the complete mouth part is modified into a tube-like structure which we call as proboscis. This is for sucking liquid food. So, what are the components of the proboscis? First of all, just look at the TS. First of all is the labium. It forms the main base of the tube, which has a trough, and inside this trough are present two pairs of stylets. Stylets means needle-like structures. One pair is maxilla and the other pair is mandibles. Yes, just look into this diagram. So there are four stylets, two maxilla and two mandibles, and all of them, as you can see, the end of these stylets is having saw-like structures. This helps in piercing. Piercing means to cut the tissue, whether it is the skin of a host or whether it is the outer epidermis of plant tissue, to pierce the outer tissue so that the sucking tube can be inserted. Then comes on the dorsal side or on the upper side of this proboscis, it is closed by the labium plus epipharynx, which is also in form of a plate-like structure, and in the center we see there is the hypopharynx with salivary duct. Now, in case of the piercing and sucking type of mouth parts of bed bug, there is a slight difference. In this case, in the bugs, we see that the labium is made up of three segments, or it is three jointed. What is the reason or what is the function of this? When the insect has to feed, it thrusts its head on the outer layer of the skin or the plant, whatever it is, and the labium, or which is found forming the outer covering of the proboscis, it folds because it is jointed, and the stylets, because of the folding, the distance between the head and the skin is shortened, and so by the force the stylets, they enter into the tissue. Now we were discussing the salivary syringe. In blood sucking insects, as we know, because they have to suck blood, just like other animals like leech, etc., first they inject and anticoagulant into the blood or tissue of the host so that coagulation doesn't occur, and then the blood is sucked. So, the salivary syringe just acts like a common syringe used in medical purposes, just like that. That means that one surface of the syringe is hard and the other surface being soft. When it contracts the saliva, it is pushed into the tissue of the host. This sort of mechanism is called as salivary syringe. The third type of mouthparts is the chewing and lapping type of mouthparts, which we see in honeybees and bumblebees. In this case, the mouthparts are modified for sucking flower juices, and the mandibles, they are used for molding the wax for the cells of the beehive. As we know, the beehive is made up of wax, so this wax is molded into small compartments or cells of the beehive by the help of the mandibles. So, looking into the diagram, we see that the main tube of the proboscis is made by glossa, or that which is the part of the labium, and there are labial palps. Then on the lateral sides there is galea, Lecinia is absent, Cardos types are also not so well developed, and just at the base you can see there is a pair of mandibles which are quite small in size. Now, looking at the TS, in the TS, as we can see, the outer part of the proboscis is formed by galea, and inside the food tube is a glossa, and which is covered by the labial palps. So, this is the feeding tube of honey bees. Coming to the fourth type, that is the sponging type. Sponging type, it occurs in houseflies and other flies also, which suck liquefied food, not from tissues but open fluids. So, in this case, we see that the main part of the tube is made up of, that is the glossa or the labium. It is made up of three parts. See, in this diagram, the basal part is called as rostrum, attached to the head. Then comes the middle part of the food tube, which we call as hostilum, and the last part is labellum. So, the three parts are rostrum, hostilum and labellum. This tube has a food groove which is covered by, just look at the TS, you will understand. This food groove is covered on the dorsal side by the labrum or the upper lip, and inside the food tube we see there is this salivary canal. Now, this labellum is specialized and it forms a sponge-like tissue. Therefore, this type of mouth part is called as sponging type. This labellum, it is having many small tubes which converge in the center and form the mouth opening, and these small tubes are called as pseudotrachea. When this labellum is immersed in a liquid food, it sucks in food just like the sponge and then passes into the food groove. The fifth type is the siphoning type of mouthparts. The siphoning type of mouthparts are found in butterflies and moths. They feed on nectar And unlike the bees, the main food tube is made up of um, made from unlike the bees, the maxilla forms the proboscis and not the labium. And out of the maxilla also, the galea part, as you can see in the TS, the galea are forming two half tubes, and they join together to form a food canal. During rest, this proboscis is coiled like a spring just under the head of the butterfly, and when the siphoning of the food is required, at that time it uncoils and sucks the nectar from the flowers. So this was the mouth parts in case of the insects and their various modifications.